The Hill had an article that I thought was interesting. It's titled, Percentage of Americans Very Satisfied with Personal Life Hits New Low. The share of Americans who say they are very satisfied with their personal lives reached a new low in 2025, according to Gallup's annual Mood of the Nation poll published Thursday. In the survey, 44% of respondents said they are very satisfied with the way things are going in their personal lives, the lowest level since Gallup started asking the question in 2001. Another 37% said they are somewhat satisfied, while 9% said they are somewhat dissatisfied, and 8% said they are very dissatisfied. The previous low point in the share of Americans who said they were very satisfied was in 2011, when 46% gave that answer as the country was still recovering from the recession. The highest point for the very satisfied share came in January 2020, right before the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly two-thirds, 65% of Americans, said at the time that they were very satisfied with their personal lives. Since then, the share of adults who said they are very satisfied in their personal lives has fallen by 21 points. That downward trend was seen across demographics, but the biggest variation is evident in political party associations. Republicans who said they are very satisfied in their personal lives fell 43 points from 80% in 2020 to 37% in 2025. By contrast, the share of very satisfied Democrats declined by 5 points from 56% in 2020 to 51% in 2025, and the share of very satisfied independents declined by 13 points from 60% to 47%. The poll was conducted January 2nd to 15th and included 1,005 adults. The margin of error is 4 percentage points. It's really interesting when they break down, obviously there's been like a big decline with all groups, but when they break down the party affiliations and you see that 80% of Republicans said they were very satisfied, 5 years ago with their personal lives, but then these other groups, are like 56, 60. That's a fascinating gap in terms of happiness, even at the supposed point where it was at its highest, where it seems like a lot of conservatives tend to be happier than liberals. Like, I guess they, in following more traditional values, are not as inclined to just get caught up in many of the behaviors and patterns that can catch people off guard. Of course, what we're seeing is that dissatisfaction with personal lives knows no ideology, and that's why it's blatant with all of these different groups. But yeah, less than half of Americans are satisfied with, excuse me, very satisfied with the way things are going in their personal lives. Um, that is a perspective that I can relate to. When you think about, just because I'm gonna do this video soon about how things are, but if we're speaking strictly about like relationships, right? I've talked before about not liking being alone and whatnot, but having to feeling almost as though you are trapped in that cycle through a variety of factors. The people that you get along with well aren't around as much because they have other obligations outside of speaking to you. Some of the people that you try to become more involved with are not as receptive, and it creates a pattern where you're basically, you're left sitting in a situation that you don't find satisfactory, uh, but you also don't think there's a feasible way out of it. But it's fascinating that the richest country in the world has less than half of us who are actually satisfied with our personal lives. And really, what it tells you is that as technology advances and people get social media and all the rest of this, stuff that they didn't have, 20, 30 years ago. It doesn't do much to improve actual relationships between human beings. I mean, I talked about how I marveled at the fact that it's easier to get somebody to talk to you over the computer, it seems, than a person that lives right down the street or is within a close enough vicinity to where you could actually do something with them in person. And how psychotic it is that you'll have these coworkers at a job, even people that you live with, who would rather sit and stare at a device than talk to you, sometimes for hours on end. And I really don't see things improving. Like, I think that number of dissatisfied people is just going to keep getting larger and larger. Because even like if we go and touch briefly on the romance stuff, and I always kind of try to tread carefully as to not entirely make the story about this, but there's a lot of like we were talking about all the guys that don't find fulfillment with these different modern chicks, and then in turn you have a lot of women that get relationships that are not satisfactory as well. And really the only difference is that it's a lot easier for them to get a partner than their male counterparts, but it still does not yield the desired result, or whatever they were thinking would happen does not happen. And so even if there's the appearance of being content, it still is not actually the case. Plus, there's a lot of couples I've seen where they are, struggling financially, and just it's a mess. There are so many innumerable factors that go into this stuff. But I do believe a big part of it is the lack of just human interaction. Like technology advances and our humanity declines. I mean, it's so surreal that these devices have basically turned into the only thing that people are willing to engage with in a lot of instances, where they just don't have any desire to talk to other people around them. And I think that part, along with, again, just general lack of good relationships, plays a big role in this stuff. Because if they said professional life, I would start talking more about the jobs. But these, as far as I can tell, it's mostly just how we are with each other. And it's very clear to me why it's as bad as it is. And which is sad, because, you would think in a country with 300 billion people, right? People would be like, if they can't be rich, if they can't, have whatever other material things they desire, at least they can, have someone to talk to and enjoy the presence of and actually do things with. But that's not as easy as it would appear, unfortunately.